Hi, my name's Deanna Armenti, and this is my exclusive interview with Rebel Zine. So I got into zine making and printmaking because I came out during the pandemic and I decided to try out lino printing first before I got into doing zines. And I realized that like all of my prints were literally like women and like the female form. And I was like, what is this saying, Deanna? And like during the pandemic, I was watching a bunch of like queer cinema and stuff. And this was like all helping me like come to that realization. And that's when then I started the Sapphic Printing Press as both like a creative outlet and as a way to like uplift other Sapphic writers and give them a space to like have their writing seen, because just like film, publications and publishing is just really like, there's a lot of gatekeeping and there's a lot of like who gets published. Throughout history, quote unquote recent history, like zines were all about knowledge accessibility and like sharing knowledge. So like, you know, in like the 90s Riot Grrrl zine era, it was like these super like accessible, cheap if not free, just black and white photocopier zines that were just made like with collage art. That is something that is really at the heart of my publication, is like I do want it to still be like accessible to people, because that's zine culture. It's just very like getting stuff out there to people that isn't in mainstream media or is kind of like squashed by mainstream media. I don't know, I feel like Instagram really squashes any sort of like queer content. So, you know, I'll have people like DMing me being like, I wish I knew about your zine sooner. Like, where are you? Like, you know, just like trying to be visible in a space that doesn't want you there. So I just wanted it to be this like open forum where people could like have a zine at the end of it and be like, I did this thing, because like I send all contributors like a free copy and as like a thank you. And the first time I got like Sapphic issue 1, like all the stacks of them like in the mail, I was like, oh my gosh, like I did that. Like, this is like a real publication now. Like it just like felt so cool to me. And I can just like remember ever since I was a kid, I wanted to have my work published. I loved books. I loved like just that whole world. So to be able to like facilitate that for other people too is like really cool. Definitely gonna keep going with publishing Sapphic. And then also I'm starting to do like leather work commissions. I would say originally costume design is what drew me into fashion design. And I recently, over like the past few years, had started educating myself on like kink related topics, and fashion is so related to that inherently, by like what like a dom wears versus what a sub wears, and how does that like talk about power dynamics and la-da-da. I could go on forever. A lot of people misunderstand kink, not only because of the like representation of it in media. I'm looking at you, 50 Shades of Grey. That is like, that's just not accurate at all. So people have this like demonized understanding of kink when that's just like really not what it is. And I honestly think the fashion of that hasn't helped. It's very campy a lot of the times. It's like black, red, or like pink. Those are your options. Like, give me this like cute little pink sub or this like scary black and red dominatrix. Like, those are your only options. And it's like, that's not the case though. And like, I think I want to really like break that visual stereotype so that we can start to have like conversations around what kink actually is, and that it's like rooted in like negotiation and consent and enthusiasm on both sides of the dynamic, right? So I want like the fashion to be able to like show that love in those dynamics, because we don't really like see that a lot. And I was reading these articles for my research, and someone, I don't know, can't remember the scholar's name, that's really bad, but like they were talking about how especially queer kink is like seen as this like abomination in the world, whereas like straight kink is like, it's something to like spice up your like life with, you know, whatever, like try it out in the bedroom. And a lot of straight couples don't take it seriously, whereas I feel like in queerness, it's like, it's inherently like just being able to relish in your queerness. I've seen a lot of like problematic articles too of like how to turn your like vanilla partner kinky. It's like that shit doesn't exist. Like you're either kinky or you're not. You're either like queer or you're not. Like that's why maybe it inherently intersects with queer identity, because just like you're born queer, you're born kinky is what I believe, because that's my experience with it, right? The article I shared with you guys, Lost Carnation, it was originally for my history class for my MA program, and we had to do this like object analysis on a fashion item that like meant something to us. So at the time, at the beginning of the semester, I chose the collar that my partner collared me with. It's like super emotional now because obviously we're not together anymore. And I kind of started thinking about this whole thing of like who owns the collar though? Because it's like the dom has given it to their sub as this like physical embodiment of like the power that their sub has given to them, right? So it's like, it's a gift, so does it belong to the sub? But it's like, but like the dom bought it. So it's like, how does this all work is kind of what I started thinking about. And not in my dynamic, it wasn't this way, but a lot of people can, in more serious relationships, can kind of equate collaring to like engagement, like an engagement ring. So I decided to explore that of like, basically I did like an object analysis of the collar and also talked about the histories of that, and kind of also talked about like the realization that we also need to like decolonize kink, because of course it comes from, you know, it's rooted in a very like colonialist past. So I talked about that in the article, also talked about and did like a creative aspect. I did a little zine. It's just digital, it hasn't been printed. And the final kind of thought that and the conclusion that I came to was like, no one owns the collar. It is like this neutral physicality or neutral physical object that only works when both people in the dynamic are participating in an interaction with it. If not, it's just like nothingness. There's no point to it and it doesn't have a meaning. For me, I think everyone should make a zine because everyone has something to say. We all have lived experiences that are different from each other, but there will be similar themes throughout it that when you read someone else's zine, you're like, okay, like that thematically is similar to like some things I've gone through, but like how that happened to you in your life is so different. And so where you can find those similarities, it can bridge differences, I feel like. So that's kind of where I'm at. Yeah.